What if someone offered you a miracle drug that could make you younger, more beautiful, and more successful than ever before? Would you take it? But what if that same drug slowly destroyed your life, stole your identity, and turned your greatest dream into your worst nightmare? Today's movie follows Elizabeth Sparkle, a once famous television star whose career begins to fade as she grows older. Desperate to regain her youth and relevance, she takes a mysterious substance that creates a younger, more perfect version of herself. This is one of the most shocking and disturbing films of recent years. So grab your snack, sit back, and let's dive into the story of The Substance with Sinello.
As the story begins, a man is shown injecting a green substance into an egg yolk. As soon as the substance enters the yolk, it suddenly duplicates itself. The scene then cuts to a star bearing the name Elizabeth Sparkle. Elizabeth is a famous and beautiful model who also hosts a television show. During the height of her career, fans constantly gathered around her star to take pictures and admire her. However, over time, public interest in her began to fade. Eventually, the star became damaged, and no one bothered to repair it, symbolizing how people were losing interest in Elizabeth. She was once a famous star, but her popularity has gradually faded, and people have begun to forget her. But her glorious years are long gone, and she is struggling to accept the passage of time and her fading celebrity status. The story then shifts to the present day. Elizabeth is now in her 50s, though she still hosts the same television show. After filming one day, she heads toward the restroom and discovers that the women's restroom is closed, forcing her to use the men's restroom instead. There, she overhears the show's director talking on the phone. He says that
Elizabeth is no longer the star she once was. The show's ratings have been declining, and we need to replace her with someone younger and more attractive. The show needs a fresh face and a new host.
After he leaves, the beauty and fame she once took pride in seem to be slipping away. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, she notices the wrinkles on her face and realizes that her youth is gone. A short time later, Harvey meets with her and explains,
Elizabeth, some changes are coming to the show because it's time for new ideas. We are replacing you, and sorry I cannot help you with this because the audience wants youth and beauty, and we must give them what they want.
His words break her heart. The news hits Elizabeth hard. She feels like she's being pushed aside simply because of her age. As Elizabeth drives away, the director's comments continue to echo in her mind. She notices workers removing an old photo of her from the wall, a painful reminder that her glory days are over. Distracted and emotionally overwhelmed, she loses focus on the road and crashes head-on into an oncoming vehicle. At the hospital, doctors are shocked to discover that she doesn't even have a scratch on her body after such a massive accident. While the doctors are confused, Elizabeth is focused on her own fears. She knows she's alive, but nothing about the situation makes sense to her. While there, a nurse checks her spine and later returns her belongings. On her way home, Elizabeth discovers a note hidden inside her coat. The note reads, "It changed my life." Attached to it is a flash drive labeled The Substance. The note promises real change. Confused, Elizabeth wonders how the package ended up in her coat. As she leaves the hospital, a man named Fred approaches her. He knew her back in school and tells her that he always thought she was beautiful. Fred gives her his phone number and says she can contact him anytime. However, the interaction makes Elizabeth uncomfortable and she quickly leaves. Things get even worse when she learns that she has officially been fired from her own show. She feels as though she has become nothing more than a memory of the past. Back at home, Elizabeth feels lost, confused, and deeply discouraged. That's when she notices the flash drive again. Curious, she plugs it into her television. A mysterious video begins playing. It explains the existence of a mysterious product called The Substance.
Our substance is a revolutionary serum capable of creating a younger, more beautiful version of you. Our substance can create two versions of the same person, the original body and a younger body. But to maintain balance, the user must switch between the two bodies every 7 days. The younger body must also receive a daily stabilizing injection, derived from fluid extracted from the spine of the original body. Whenever one body is active, the other remains unconscious. With our substance, she can unlock her DNA and restore her beauty, energy, and youth. All she needs is a simple injection, and the substance will use her body as a matrix and allow her to experience a younger, better version of herself.
After watching the video, Elizabeth finds it difficult to believe any of it and throws the flash drive into the trash. That night, she goes to a bar and drinks heavily in an attempt to forget her problems. Even after returning home, she cannot escape her sadness. Her growing awareness of her wrinkles and old age consumes her thoughts. She begins remembering the days when she was a radiant and attractive Hollywood star, but those memories only make her feel worse. Finally, Elizabeth makes a decision. She retrieves the flash drive from the trash and calls the number. The person on the other end of the line asks only for her address and then provides instructions for collecting the package. After speaking, she writes down an address. The next day, while reading the newspaper, she notices a casting call for a replacement host for her former show. The age requirement is between 18 and 30 years old. Seeing this only increases her anxiety. Soon after, she receives another envelope in the mail. Inside is a card bearing the symbol of the substance and a number accessing card. Elizabeth begins to believe that this may be her only chance to reclaim her life. Following the address she received, she travels to a remote part of the city and arrives at an isolated location. There is a locked door, which she opens using the card. Behind the door is a dark, dirty hallway. The place appears completely abandoned. Although frightened, Elizabeth gathers her courage and walks toward a white room at the end of the corridor. Inside, she finds dozens of numbered drawers. After locating the number that matches her card, she retrieves a box and takes it home. When she opens the box, she finds detailed instructions explaining the process. The kit contains the activation serum, stabilization kit, transfer equipment, and specialized nutrition supplies for both bodies. There are also several warnings describing the possible consequences and unknown side effects of the procedure. Elizabeth stares at herself in the bathroom mirror for a long time, uncertain whether she should proceed. Standing in front of a mirror, Elizabeth carefully examines her body. She notices every wrinkle, spot, and imperfection. She remembers the promise from the video that she could become young and beautiful again. Finally, she gathers her courage and injects herself with the substance. At first, nothing seems to happen. Looking into the mirror, she sees no change whatsoever. She laughs at herself and begins to walk away. But suddenly, she feels dizzy. Intense pain surges through her body. She collapses to the floor as her muscles become stiff and uncontrollable. Moments later, strange changes begin occurring in her back. The skin around her spine starts to split apart. Her eyes struggle to focus as the pain becomes unbearable. Then, something impossible happens. A new body slowly emerges from her old one. The process is horrifying but successful. Standing before the mirror, the new version of Elizabeth can hardly believe what she sees. She is young, beautiful, and flawless. The impossible has become reality. She can hardly believe what has happened. It feels surreal. Yet beneath her shock, she feels a spark of happiness, as if she has finally achieved something she desperately wanted. Admiring her youthful appearance and new curves, Elizabeth is overwhelmed with excitement. She is younger, more beautiful, and more perfect than she ever imagined. After admiring herself in the mirror for a long time, she remembers that her original body still needs to be cared for. Following the instructions provided by the company, she attaches a nutrient supply bag to Elizabeth's unconscious body to keep it alive. That night, she spends hours enjoying her newfound beauty and freedom. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's original body remains lying on the cold bathroom floor. The next morning, however, she wakes up to find blood dripping from her nose. She remembers the instructions about the stabilizer. To keep the younger body functioning, she must extract a special fluid from the spine of her original body and inject it into herself every day. She quickly does so, and almost immediately, she feels normal again. Confident in her new appearance, she decides to audition for the very show that recently fired her. Using the name Sue, she attends the audition. The moment she walks into the room, everyone is stunned by her beauty, and the director immediately selects her. Then she remembers that she will need to switch bodies every week. To avoid raising suspicion, she tells the producers,
"Sir, actually, my mother is very sick, and I need time off every week to take care of her."
The director accepts the explanation without hesitation. Her excuse works perfectly, and she gets the job. Soon, Sue becomes the show's new star. She enjoys the attention, gains a massive social media following. Sue quickly begins enjoying her new life. Her popularity explodes, and before long, she has built a huge following. Billboards, advertisements, and posters featuring Sue begin appearing all across the city. 6 days pass, and the 7th day finally arrives. The day she must switch back to Elizabeth. Elizabeth's body. Following the rules, Sue transfers her consciousness back. Elizabeth awakens and returns to her ordinary life. When she visits the studio, she is treated like a nobody. The director treats her poorly, insults her, and effectively pushes her out of the spotlight. Hurt and humiliated, Elizabeth returns home. The next morning, while reading the newspaper, she receives an envelope from the company that supplied the substance. Inside is a message informing her that her refill kit is ready for pickup. She collects the package and waits for her next cycle. 7 days later, she transforms into Sue once again. This time, she decides to fully enjoy everything her new body has to offer. She spends her days partying, socializing, and living the glamorous life she always wanted. Sue realizes that Elizabeth's unconscious body must remain hidden. To solve the problem, she decides to build a hidden room inside her apartment by tearing down part of a wall. The construction noise soon attracts the attention of a neighbor who comes over to complain. However, the moment he sees Sue, he becomes completely distracted by her beauty and ends up flirting with her instead. He even offers to help if she ever needs anything. Sue politely turns him down and continues working on her secret project. Soon, she successfully finishes the hidden room and moves Elizabeth's body inside, safely concealed from the outside world. She also transferred all the photos and belongings of Elizabeth in the room. Over time, Sue becomes addicted to the attention and fame. She becomes so focused on her career that she forgets an important rule, that she must switch bodies in every 7 days. One evening, Sue invites a friend over and continues enjoying herself with him. Then Sue suddenly experiences a nosebleed and realizes her cycle is ending. She knows she should switch immediately, but greed takes over. Instead, she extracts extra stabilizing fluid from Elizabeth's body and injects it into herself, allowing her to remain in the younger body little longer. 7 more days pass. When she finally switches back, Elizabeth is horrified to discover that one of her fingers has aged and become severely deformed. Panicked, she calls the company and explains what happened. The company coldly informs her that,
Elizabeth, there is no cure. What's done is done. You are not two people. You are one. What happens to one body affects the other. What's done is done. The younger body was created from the original one, meaning every action affects both versions.
shaken by the warning, Elizabeth picks up another refill kit and later visits a restaurant. There she meets an elderly man who begins speaking strangely. Elizabeth notices a familiar mark on his hand, the same mark she once saw on the nurse. Suddenly, she realizes the horrifying truth. The old man is actually the original version of that nurse. Looking directly at her, he asks,
Has your other self started feeding on you yet?
The question terrifies Elizabeth, and she quickly leaves the restaurant. Back at home, she tries to reclaim some happiness in her original body. She dresses up, applies makeup, and prepares to meet an old friend. But just as she's about to leave, she sees giant posters of Sue outside. Comparing herself to her younger self becomes unbearable. Instantly, her confidence shatters. She tears apart her appearance, smudges her makeup, ruins her hair, and falls into a deep depression. Comparing herself to her younger self becomes unbearable. She spends the night overeating. The next day, she switches bodies again and prepares for work. During a performance, she suddenly experiences a horrifying sensation in her lower body. Panicked, she runs to the restroom and imagines something grotesque emerging from her stomach. She pulls a piece of chicken from her stomach, a horrifying symbol of her deteriorating condition. She wakes up terrified, realizing it was only a dream. The following morning, she actually switches bodies and heads to the studio. But when she arrives, she finds workers packing up all the equipment and the show has been cancelled. Confused and frightened, Elizabeth rushes to the director for answers. To her surprise, he smiles and reassures her.
Sue, you have become a major star now. You're not going to host an ordinary television show. You have been chosen to host the massive special New Year's Eve this year.
Sue is thrilled and immediately accepts the offer. However, there's a problem. New Year's Eve falls on the exact day she is supposed to switch the bodies. Ignoring the rules once again, she chooses fame over responsibility. She remains in Sue's body for far longer than she should. She continues taking stabilizer from Elizabeth's body and injecting it into herself. Eventually, when Elizabeth finally switches back, she is horrified by what she sees. Her original body has aged dramatically. Years seem to have passed in only weeks. The excessive extraction of serum has rapidly destroyed her physical condition. Looking at herself in the mirror, Elizabeth becomes filled with disgust. In a fit of rage, she destroys Sue's photographs and covers every mirror in the house to avoid seeing images of her younger self. Desperate, she contacts the company and asks,
Is there any way to reverse the damage and restore my original body?
No, Elizabeth, as we told you already, that the damage is permanent and cannot be undone. But still you have another option. If you wish, you can terminate the process now and continue living as you and accept the current condition.
But Elizabeth refuses to accept that fate. Soon after, she receives a call about the upcoming New Year's Eve show. Without hesitation, she switches back into Sue's body and continues chasing fame. This time, she takes things even further. She extracts enough serum from Elizabeth's body to last for 3 entire months and injects it into herself. For the next 3 months, Sue lives a dream life without switching bodies even once. But eventually, the serum runs out. One night, while spending time with a man at her apartment, she suddenly feels something terribly wrong inside her body. Her organs seem to be failing. Panicked, she rushes to Elizabeth's body to extract more serum. But nothing comes out. The supply is completely exhausted. Desperate, Sue calls the company for help. They inform her,
Elizabeth, it means you have already drained every last drop of the serum available. Now you have to wait for the new supply and immediately switch back to the original body now.
As Sue's condition rapidly worsens, she begins the switching process. Meanwhile, the man she invited over becomes suspicious and starts walking toward the bathroom to investigate. Fortunately, Elizabeth manages to complete the switch in time and locks the bathroom door before he can discover the horrifying truth. When she finally looks into the mirror, she is horrified. She has become even older. She is grotesquely aged, partially bald, and barely able to walk. Elizabeth becomes completely overwhelmed with fear and panic. Desperate for a solution, she calls the company once again and tells them that she wants to end the entire process. The company accepts her request and instructs her to obtain a special termination fluid. Covering her weakened body, Elizabeth goes to collect the substance. She prepares to inject it into Sue's unconscious body and finally end the nightmare. However, just before doing it, she remembers the company's warning. Once the process is terminated, she will remain trapped in her current body forever. Thinking about this, Elizabeth changes her mind. She decides not to use the substance on herself. Instead, she convinces herself that Sue is responsible for all of her suffering. Consumed by anger, she begins injecting the termination serum into Sue's body. But before administering the entire dose, she suddenly remembers that Sue is supposed to host the New Year's Eve special and is about to receive major recognition and awards. Conflicted, Elizabeth stops halfway through the process and tries to wake Sue up. She shakes her repeatedly, but Sue doesn't respond. Next, Elizabeth attempts a body switch, but it doesn't work either. Running out of options, she removes the activator from her own spine and injects it directly into Sue. And the procedure works. For the first time, both versions of Elizabeth are alive and active at the same time. When Sue realizes that Elizabeth was planning to terminate her, she flies into a rage. A violent fight breaks out between the two versions of the same person. Sue brutally attacks Elizabeth, and the violent confrontation quickly spirals out of control, and Elizabeth is fatally injured. Afterward, Sue is overwhelmed with regret. She realizes she has killed the original version of herself, the very source that allowed her to exist. Without Elizabeth, she may never be able to access the stabilizing substances she needs to survive. Nevertheless, she cleans up the scene and heads to her highly anticipated New Year's Eve show. At first, everything seems perfect. She receives a grand welcome, the audience adores her, and her career appears to be at its peak. The crowd cheers wildly, and for a brief moment, everything seems perfect. Then something goes terribly wrong. Blood begins pouring from her nose. Terrified, she rushes to the restroom. As she looks into the mirror, several of her teeth suddenly loosen and fall out. That's when Sue realizes the horrifying truth. Because Elizabeth is dead, the foundation of her existence is collapsing. Her body is literally falling apart. Knowing she won't survive much longer, Sue rushes back home in search of a solution. During the elevator ride, parts of her body begin falling apart. A fingernail comes off, then part of her ear detaches. She struggles to stay calm whenever other people enter the elevator, pretending that everything is normal. Once reaching home, she desperately injects herself with activator fluid, hoping it will stabilize her condition, but nothing happens. Then she remembers the original substance, the one-time use substance that created Sue in the first place. In a final act of desperation, she injects the substance into herself. Her body erupts in agony and begins transforming uncontrollably. Almost immediately, unbearable pain tears through her body. Her torso splits open and a horrifying creature emerges. The result is neither Elizabeth nor Sue. It is a grotesque fusion of both, a twisted hybrid being made from fragments of their identities and bodies. Instead of restoring her beauty, the process creates a grotesque hybrid creature, a horrifying fusion of multiple forms that barely resembles a human being. Despite her monstrous appearance, the creature still believes she is a star. Her mind is completely broken, and she desperately clings to the illusion that she can continue her life as before. She places a large photograph of Sue's face over her own deformed features and returns to the New Year's Eve celebration. But the deception doesn't last. The moment she steps onto the stage, the audience sees her true appearance. Panic spreads throughout the crowd. People scream in terror and rush for their exits. People scream and run for their lives. The crowd calls her a monster. Fear spreads throughout the entire venue. In the chaos, one frightened man attacks the creature with a baseball bat. The blow shatters part of its face, and blood sprays across the studio. The entire event descends into absolute madness. The audience flees in horror. As the creature continues to break apart, its body collapses into pieces. What remains crawls across the floor like a dying insect, dragging itself out of the studio. It reaches the location where Elizabeth Sparkle's Hollywood star is embedded in the sidewalk. There, the final remnants of Elizabeth collapse beside the star that once represented her fame and success. Her body completely disintegrates. Only her face remains. For a brief moment, it gazes upward toward the night sky with a faint smile, as if remembering the glory she spent her entire life chasing. Then suddenly, it bursts apart. All that remains is a pool of blood. The following day, workers arrive and clean up the mess as if nothing had ever happened. And with that disturbing final image, the movie comes to an end.
And that's how the story of the substance comes to an end. What started as a desperate attempt to regain youth and beauty ultimately became a horrifying journey of obsession, self-destruction, and identity loss. Elizabeth spent her entire life chasing the attention and admiration of others. The movie delivers a powerful message about society's obsession with youth, beauty, and perfection. It shows how far people can go when they're afraid of aging and being forgotten, and the devastating consequences that can follow. So, what do you think? If you were given the chance to become younger, richer, and more successful overnight, would you take it, knowing the risks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another movie breakdown. Thanks for watching. That's it for today. I'm Sinello, and I'll see you in the next story.